every school of thought on personal growth, well-being, spirituality, mindfulness, and productivity, every type of educational platform, online training, mobile application, live event, weekend seminar, every avenue of metaphysics ignores the fact that you and everyone you have ever known of will all soon be dead. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen to you. And the coaches and gurus, hell, they know it. They know it. They know no matter what kind of life they promise you can have or that you can manifest out of thin air, no matter what dreams they are trying to sell you, they know that it's all temporary. Now, that may not sound pleasant, but that's because our viewpoint of death is all wrong. If we lived in a more sane and balanced society, we would see life for what it is. It's a cycle. If our culture was a little bit more enlightened, we would know the death process for what it is. It's a gateway. If the search for meaning in your life were a real career instead of being looked at as a useless hobby, we would not only live longer and happier, but we would live better. Unfortunately, that's not the world we live in, is it? No, far from it. And it's not enough to blame materialism or capitalism or racism or corrupted governments and businesses, because even if we fixed all of that, the day after all that happens, you and I still have to understand the meaning of our life and understand the meaning of our death. Your life's meaning and your death are tied together because, as a matter of fact, they are just two sides of the same issue. But the spirituality movement, they don't want to look into that, do they? No, hell no, of course not. They much rather you stick to their tried and true marketing ploy of promising you something for nothing. But do you know what this kind of spirituality creates? According to a study published in the British Journal of Psychiatry, Michael King of University College London and his colleagues examined 7,400 interviews, and the analysis led to one conclusion. People, and I'm quoting here, quote, people who have a spiritual understanding of life in the absence of a structural framework are vulnerable to mental disorders, dependence on drugs, abnormal eating, anxiety, phobias, and neurosis. The researchers concluded that there is increasing evidence that people who profess spiritual beliefs in the absence of any kind of framework are more vulnerable to mental disorders. What this indicates is that spirituality, like anything else that lacks a structure or framework, is just chaos. It's not liberating anyone from the shackles of so-called outdated religion. It's just making a kind of quasi-new religion that is mediocre in comparison to its older counterparts. What we have here is spiritual profiteering that's dominated by material consumption and overinflated personalities. The scary part is that many of these spiritual and personal development coaches know what the old mesmerists knew, and that is they know how to fascinate their audience. You see, the truth is, psychic abilities and psychic domination, for that matter, does exist. And there have been many a poor soul who has fallen victim to these people. They hoped to find enlightenment, but they only found themselves being used for money, emotional support, sexual favors, and 100 other things until they were finally used up and tossed aside. Google true stories of cult members sometime and see for yourself. The stories are tragic. But the other tragedy is this. Even when these spiritual leaders and personal development coaches have your best intentions at heart, they still neglect the fact that our lives on this earth are temporary. They still are running away from death, or they try to shove it under the carpet, but they are just as afraid of the transition as anyone else. And that is a huge disservice to you, because you are being misled to search for wealth and productivity and scientific innovation as a substitute for meaning. But those things will never, ever fill that gaping hole in your soul. Perhaps you heard of the phrase that desire is the root of all suffering. And this is because the root of your desires come from your divine self. And it wants you to become a willing expression of your infinite evolution. So if you want to grow in your existence, you have to get beyond the cycle of life and death. Because as long as you are focused solely on this world, to the exclusion of anything else or any other type of reality, you are a prisoner of this world. You're a prisoner of materialism. You're a prisoner of external cosmic forces. You're a prisoner of separation or separateness, and you're a prisoner of mortality. And what makes these prisons so dangerous is that they are all in your mind, which makes it sound simple and easy to dismiss. But if you ever tried to get over or overcome a bad habit or an acute fear of something, then you know firsthand how complex and real mental cages can be. So if you lived in these mental cages, these mental prisons all of your life, then your subconscious mind will use its own reasoning to reaffirm what it considers to be true, which is that you belong there. Even if you know it's not true, you still end up smacking your head right up against the bars of your own cage and you can't escape. This was the actual reason why religions and meditative practices and esoteric systems were invented in the first place. We needed a way to escape. And even if you believe many of these once useful systems have degraded over the centuries, so be it. The absolute necessity to be free from this cycle of life and death, however, has not degraded, and the need to free ourselves is just as important today, if not even more so than it was when these religions and mystery schools were developed. These three things: 1, the meaning of your life today; 2, the question of what you are and what do you do next; and 3, the growth of your divine self through you as a part of your infinite evolution. These three things are the reasons why you and I are alive. And it's high time, that we start to give these inner impulses the attention that they deserve. But how do you do that? How do you go about shifting your internal world or shifting into your eternal world? Now, you know, mainstream religion is not the answer. Personal development is okay as far as it goes, but in all honesty, personal development is really good at refining you on the level of personality, which is useful. It's very useful, but it's not the answer. And you can forget about popular spirituality. It's just a total mess. And yet, going along with the status quo of mundane life is just unacceptable. There has to be something you can do. And there is. Like I said, the original idea behind religion and what some people call the mysteries was to reintegrate yourself back into your divine self. The story of humanity's once heavenly existence, fall, and then climb back into grace is an analogy. It's talking about your involution into the multiverse and your evolution back into spirit as a mature being. Some people call this gnosis or enlightenment. I call it growing up, or getting to the point where you realize what you are. Once you know what you are, you will realize that you are already an immortal being, and there is nothing you need from anyone. You don't need protection. You don't need acceptance, and you may sure don't need anyone's approval. You are already that enlightened human. You are already semi-divine. If this was not the case, you would have never noticed things like the Mandela Effect to start with. Now, there's a lot of ideas about what the Mandela Effect is and how it's all happening. And, I have my own ideas, and I posted some of them here on YouTube. But what I can tell you is what the Mandela Effect means. It means that it is time for you to wake up. You are an immortal being that lives beyond space and time. And just because one of your personalities, the thing that they gave a name to and you call I, just because one of those dies, so what? You don't. But the problem is that over 90% of the world acts as if death is just it. Think about it like this. Every problem humanity faces today has to do with the fear of loss. All of it has to do with the fear of losing something. And death is the ultimate fear of the biggest loss. But if you want to grow like in this lifetime, you must get over the issue of death. And you say, okay, Jason, this all sounds interesting and all that, but how do I work all that you're saying into my life on a practical working level? You must turn on the parts of your nervous system connected to the parts of your divine mind that will plant, water, and grow your godhood. Now that's why meditation is so cool, because it gets you halfway there. But if you want to get to that place where you know what you are going to have to go further. You have to be able to experience that lucid, heightened state in your everyday waking life. And I want to show you a way to do it. It's not as difficult as some would have you believe. And you can start right